Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Ace of Rays podcast. Today, we have a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about. It's been a pretty eventful couple of weeks, a lot of good, a little bit of bad. We'll talk about all of it. We're going to talk about, it seems like the Rays are getting in a better and better position, so we're going to talk about the potential for maybe some playoff games in the future. We're going to talk about, some of the top hitters from the last week, some of the top pitchers, both the starters and the relievers, and then kind of talk about the road ahead. So anyways, let's get into it. Let's talk about the last couple of weeks. The Rays, I said at the end of the last podcast episode, the Rays, I would have considered the last 2 weeks to be successful for them if they had won 8 of 12 or 7 of 12. I was sort of optimistic about the 8-4 record over the last 12 games, especially considering how much the Texas Rangers had kind of owned them in previous, well, including this year, but in previous years. And then, a tough series against the Mets. They're playing Miami in the Citrus series. They had lost 2 of 3 to them last month. And then they were playing Boston, a division rival, for the first time this season. So I said, all right, 7-5 seems doable. 8-4 would be ideal. The Rays are 9-3 in their last 12. They have the best record in Major League Baseball since May 20th. The broadcasts have hammered that point home endlessly, which is fantastic because you should, whenever your team is first place in the league in some sort of stretch, and absolutely I want to hear about that. I want to see it on the screen and hear BA and Dwayne Stats and all of them and Andy Freed for the past couple games talking about that, and that's fantastic. 9-3. How'd they get there? Well, they got there by starting off a series against the Texas Rangers. Won the first game of that series 5-1. That was great. Looked great in that game. The second game of that series, they did not look good. They actually looked pretty terrible. Actually, that wasn't that game. That was the one after that. The Rangers, the Rays went up 5-0. They did actually wind up looking pretty bad down the stretch in that game. They gave up 4 runs after leading 5-0. But all that matters is that they held on to win. The bullpen was a big part of that. Fairbanks shut the door. Before that, Shane Baz gave up 3 runs, nothing after that. Manuel Rodriguez, Mason Montgomery, Uceda, and Fairbanks. And then there was that ugly, ugly win. The Rays could not hit to save their lives through 8 innings of Game 3 of that series against the Rangers. And then in the 9th inning, they get some runners on base. They wind up getting a run home. Still doesn't look too good. They're they're taking advantage of some misplays and stuff like that. And then ultimately, the tying run comes home on an infield hit. And then the winning run comes home on Marcus Semien falling asleep and not knowing which way to throw the ball. So I said, I was live streaming that game on this channel actually, and I said after that game ended, sometimes you don't win games, you just wait for your opponent to lose them. And that is basically what happened in that game. The Rays won that game by virtue of their opponent losing it. Very late. Very, very late in that game. So fantastic. The Rays pull off a sweep of Texas, and now the tiebreaker is even in that situation. The first tiebreaker, in case, Texas is pretty much nowhere in the standings right now, but in case like that were to be a thing down the stretch, you never know when teams go on a run. Actually, Texas has gotten back into it, so there you go. 4-game win streak for Texas right now. They're 36-36. Meanwhile, Tampa Bay Rays, they're 3.5 above them. If it comes down to a tiebreaker, it's going to come to something else other than the head-to-head because they've now split the head-to-head, which is insane to think about given the fact that the Rangers swept the Rays in Texas in early April. But then the Rays come back and they do the same thing at home against Texas. So now the tiebreaker moves to something else. I haven't even started thinking about the tiebreaker procedure yet because it's June, mid-June. and we've still got a long way to go in the season. But good for them. They got a sweep in that series. Then you had the Miami series, and that was chaotic. That was a series that the Rays, I think, should have swept that one as well. They won the first game of that series against Miami 4-3, regular sort of game. Miami came on a little bit late. They got a couple of runs, but it was pretty much the Rays game to lose. And then the last game of that series, they won 3-2. Great pitching performance all around from the Rays, but Edwin Uceda gets the win. Drew Rasmussen, 6 innings, 2 runs. And then again, bullpen just shuts the door. That's what the Rays bullpen does. The middle game of that series was absolute chaos. And I think that it was badly mismanaged. Um, I think that putting Mason Montgomery into a situation where I forget whether the bases were loaded or they just had 2 runners on. But Miami had already scored several runs in the 5th inning, and they're coming back, or in the 5th inning, they're coming back. The Rays led in that game 4-0. Miami came back. They scored 4 runs in the third, so it was tied. The Rays scored a couple runs. Then the Rays started trailing. Taj Bradley gave up 3 more runs in that inning. All being said, Mason Montgomery is put in there, and they leave him in there for the rest of the 5th inning. And hindsight tells you maybe you shouldn't have done that. Maybe you've got all these guys in the bullpen that can pitch multiple innings. Maybe that's where you go to one of them. You don't want to throw in the towel yet. And obviously, you shouldn't have thrown in the towel. Look at the bottom 3 of the lineup that game. Christopher Morel, 3 for 3 with 4 RBIs. Danny Jansen, 3 for 4 with 2 RBIs. Taylor Walls, 2 for 4 with 3 RBIs. And most of those were late, too. That was where they got a lot of their runs, was later in the game. The rest of the Rays bullpen pretty much does their job. I mean, Garrett Clevenger unfortunately gets a loss for the 1 unearned run he gave up in the 10th. But that was a game I think the Rays should have won. We'll talk a little bit about Taj Bradley in a bit, but moving on from that series, I mean, the Rays won the series. To that point, they hadn't lost the series since the Miami series in mid-May, which is great because now you're 3 weeks removed from that. And then the Boston series, Game 1, they just didn't look good. It was kind of the same thing. Shane Baz was all right. He was fine. Eric Orze gave up a couple of runs, which was kind of uncharacteristic of him, especially considering how well he's played in the last couple of months, how big of a performer he's been for them. But and then Pete Fairbanks. What's funny about Pete Fairbanks is that he is great at getting the save, but anytime he blows a save, it's never just a 1 run save that he get. Like, it's always got to be dramatic. It's always got to be in the worst way possible, right? It's not a 1 run game and he gives up a run and it's tied and oh no, we're going to the 10th. No, it's got to be 2 or more runs, and that's what happened here. 3 hits, 2 runs in an inning and a third. And then they have Ian Seymour come in his debut. I think it was his debut, and he pitches 2 innings, and he gets, unfortunately, credit for the blown save with the, stupid ghost runner roll on second. But he also gets a win. Great for him. Unbelievable. But yeah, that was his first MLB game. And that's the situation he comes into. The Rays do get a couple runs, and then they hold Boston to nothing in the bottom of the 11th, so they wind up winning that one. That was another ugly win. The next couple games, just they lose the second game of that series, just can't get the bats going at all against Giolito, they mentioned on the broadcast multiple times, like, Giolito is hot and cold, right? He's a guy with a 5-something ERA, but he's, that doesn't tell the whole story because he gives up 6 runs in 3 innings one day and then he throws a 7-inning shutout the next. And that's kind of what happened here. The Rays just couldn't get anything off him. And then they lose in the last game of that series, 4-3. I didn't see that one. I don't even remember where I was that day. But Zach Littell, kind of uncharacteristic, gave up 4 runs in that one. But bullpen shut the door after it, gave a chance for the Rays late, but they just couldn't get it done. So that was the Rays' first series loss in a month to that point. They hadn't lost the series almost a month. The last series loss was the 16th to 18th. That was the 9th to 11th of June. So great for them. And then they come into this Mets series, and it's like, all right, to that point, the Rays are 6-3 in their last 9. And I'm thinking to myself, all right, I said that 8-4 would be great. Now they're playing the Mets. Do you take 7-5? And I'm looking at the starters for the first game of this series, and I'm thinking to myself, it just doesn't seem like that game and then today's game. It just doesn't seem likely that the Rays will be able to win 2 of 3. I mean, with the way the Mets have been playing, they came into the series having won 6 straight games. Um, they're the best team in the National League, the best team in Major League Baseball. I'm thinking it's just not going to be possible. Well, they come in and it looks that way. They go down 5-1. They actually led that game 1-0. And then they give up 2 runs in the bottom of the fourth, give up 3 in the bottom of the fifth, and Taj Bradley comes out of that one. Like I said, we'll talk more about that later. Eric Orze, the rest of the bullpen, they don't give up anything the rest of the way. But the Rays find a way, which is kind of becoming the theme of this team. Find a way. They score 6 runs in the 6th inning. You heard that right. They scored 6 runs in the 6th inning. It was capped off by a Danny Jansen 2-run homer. After they tied it, see, I don't walk away from the TV. I used to, and I've kind of learned my lesson over the years not to, unless it's a game that I don't care about, the outcome, and it's, a 10-2 game, and then it winds up ending 12-11 or something like that. It's like, okay, cool, it's not my team, I don't care. But when it's my team, I'm going to watch till the end regardless. So I watched that full thing, and I did not see the Rays coming back from that, but I was scoring the game, and I was like, well, at the very least, I've got to finish it in the scorebook. They the way that this came about, right? Down 5-1. Jake Mangum comes up, he singles. All right, 2 runs score. It's 5-3. All right, great. It's a ball game now. Basically, you're sitting there as a fan and just thinking, okay, just, it's early enough still, just chip away, right? Maybe they don't win the game, but maybe they feel good about it heading into the Saturday game. They came back and, oh, shucks, they lost 5-4, but here we go on Saturday, and, oh, the offense is really clicking. They found it at the end of the last game. Well, that's not where it ends, though. Jose Caballero, he grounded out, but it scored a run in the process. Then Cameron Meisner comes up and singles, and his average has not been good since the very start of the season, and he winds up being clutch in this situation, and he comes up and he ties the game. Jake Mangum comes around to score on that. And you knew Jake Mangum was coming up. It wasn't a ball that was hit particularly deep, but with the speed, you knew that Jake Mangum was going to score there. And then Danny Jansen comes up and he hits a 2-run homer. Of all the people that could have been the heroes in this game, it winds up being, Danny Jansen and Cameron Meisner as the 2 people who tied and took the lead in that game. Yandy Diaz was great. Jonathan Aranda was great as well. They both had 3 hits. And they win 7-5. They still won in New York. And they're feeling good regardless. They found a way to win that one. And, the offense is feeling even better now. I missed the Saturday game. I will admit, I was working that day. But the Rays won that one 8-4. They scored 5 runs in the 4th inning. Drew Rasmussen struggled a little bit. Gave up 4 runs in 5 innings. But again, the bullpen shut the door. Didn't give up a single run. Only gave up 4 hits through 4 innings. It's fantastic. And no walks either. Anytime you have a whip in any given situation of 1 or less, that's a really good thing. And that was the case here. Um, Today's game was fantastic, and I'm recording this on Sunday. I like to record these a day in advance of when they're coming out. Um, Coming into this one, it was another one where it was like Shane Baz, okay, but Canning has been good. I know Shane Baz will keep us in it. They mentioned on the broadcast like the Rays had won the last 4 games he'd pitched in, and it's like, okay, you can kind of understand that he'd only given up 3 runs, and then the bullpen shut the door after that, which is very characteristic of the Rays bullpen. I want to see what the relievers ERA is over the course of that May 20th to today stretch. I hope they'll put that on the broadcast at some point in the next couple weeks because they've been fantastic late in games. But, it's like, all right, well, Shane Baz will give you 5 innings. He'll give up maybe 3 or 4 runs. It's Mets, so you want to pad that a little bit and say 5. Canning is going to be starting for the Mets. He's had a decent season. Struggled a little bit recently, but coming into that game, his ERA was 3.20 or something like that. He just couldn't find the strike zone. He winds up walking like 5, 6 hitters, and the Rays scored on all of them. So you just can't allow that to happen if you're the Mets, and the Rays absolutely took advantage of that. Every single chance that they got. The first run that was scored on a ground ball. It was a force out, and Cameron Meisner got the first, and they scored a run on that play. The second run that they scored was off of a wild pitch. Then a Danny Jansen single. Danny Jansen is, we'll talk about him a little bit later too, but what a player he's turning out to be for the Rays. Jake Mangum grounds out in the top of the third. That he had to beat out a throw to first in order to score on that one. And then, the big bats come into play. Jonathan Aranda with a double makes it 6-0. It looks like it's out of reach at this point, but you don't want to celebrate yet. It is the Mets. 6 runs. They can easily make that up and win 7-6. Junior Caminero puts a dagger on it in the top of the ninth with a home run. 3-run homer, points up to his dad afterwards. That was fantastic to see. So the Rays win that one, and they go to 9-3 in their last 12. And they sweep the Mets, the best team in baseball, coming into this weekend. They sweep them in their house in New York in front of 40 some odd thousand fans, which the Rays ballpark holds a quarter of that. The Rays' current ballpark. And they move to 3 games up on basically a 4-way tie for the last wild card spot. And they move to a game ahead of Toronto, which, being from Philadelphia, I like it when I can cheer for the Phillies too and have a reason to cheer for them. Every Rays fan was cheering for the Phillies this weekend. We needed Toronto to start losing games, and they did. We'll talk more about that in a bit as well. There's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to talk about with this team right now. But the Rays, they move up and they get to the final wild card spot right now. The Red Sox, who are also on a little bit of a run, having beat the Rays in 2 of 3. The Rays' only series loss in the last month now. And then, the Yankees going on sort of a losing streak as a result of being swept by the Red Sox. The Rays are 3.5 out for the division. Who would have thought in mid-June the Rays would be looking at the division and it would be in reach? I mean, I'm not going to be delusional. I still think it's the Yankees' division to win, but the Rays are right there. They're 3.5 back. Toronto's 4.5 back. Boston's 6.5 back. We're in mid-June. The season goes until September. These guys play every day. Almost every day. There's still like 80 to 90 games left, right? What was that? Game 71 today? So we've actually got about 100 games. Well, yeah, about 90, 92, 93 games left. I don't know. I'm not good at math. Whatever. We got like 90 games left in the season. So, there's a lot of time. And I guess this is a perfect segue into, talking about the Blue Jays, who also had a pretty bad weekend. The way that teams make the postseason, I found this out in 2018 when the Rays just missed it and would have been in with the current postseason rules. First team out, won 90 games. What I found out that season was that, okay, you can be good for a stretch, and then you can be terrible for a stretch. The teams that find a way to get in the postseason, even though the Rays didn't that year, but I thought they were a postseason caliber team, was they weren't just good in stretches. They were good the whole second half of that season. They swept the Red Sox, who won the World Series that year, and outscored them like 24-5 in the process in late August. And then 2 months later, the Red Sox won the World Series. You're you're gonna be hot and cold over the course of a season. You're gonna have losing streaks. The Yankees are on one now. The Detroit Tigers are on one now. They've only won 5 out of the last 10. They've lost 2 straight. Houston has won 5 straight, but earlier this season they were losing a lot of games. Kansas City right now, they've lost 6 straight. That's a different story. Minnesota's lost 4 straight. But meanwhile, Texas, like I said before, they've won 4. Boston's won 5. Baltimore's won 3 straight. The Athletics have won 3 straight. All right, great. And then the National League, the Phillies have won 4 in a row. The Mets have lost 3 in a row. Arizona's won 5 in a row. Washington has lost 8 in a row. You're going to have streaks like that. You're going to look at the standings, and every week, every day, you're going to see streaks like that. And it's probably going to be your team every once in a while that's, lost 3 or 4 straight games in a season. This is the time for the Mets right now. They hadn't lost. I don't think they got swept at all this season. Maybe earlier in the season they did, but they certainly hadn't gotten swept at home. Um, you're going to have stretches where you lose games. You're going to have stretches where you win games. The teams that make the postseason are the ones that don't necessarily have those 6 and 7 game winning streaks, but they win almost every series. And the Rays are 6-1-1 in their last 8 series, which bodes absolutely well. If you win every, think about it this way. If you win every 3 game series and you take 3 or 4 in every series or even split every series, you're going to make the postseason. I mean, if you win 2 of 3 in every series, your win percentage is 667, which would be good for, wait for it, let me do the math, 108 wins. That's assuming you win 2 of 3 every series. The Rays obviously lost 2 of 3 to the Red Sox. They lost 2 of 3 to the Marlins last month. That was the only series that started and ended that. Well, besides they actually got swept by the Phillies earlier that month. That wasn't fun. They got swept by KC. That also wasn't fun. Um, but those are just kind of the series that, like, if you wind up winning 2 of 3 against the Mets, forget about sweeping them. If you win 2 of 3, that's a good result. The fact that you swept them, that's so much, infinitely so much better. Now, the series doesn't mean anything, really, because down the stretch, the only way that that series would have an impact is if the Rays played the Mets in the World Series, and that wound up deciding who has home field advantage. But that's such an unlikely possibility that it's just like, all right, we'll take the win. It doesn't really mean anything for the long term. It's great. It's a litmus test to see how well we stack up against a great team like the Mets. And let's not fool ourselves. We swept the Mets, but they're a great team. It didn't look like it, but they're a great team. You don't get to 20 games above 500 by being terrible. It doesn't, like, what really made this weekend special for the Rays was that it was almost the effect of sweeping a division rival, sweeping 2 of them at the same time, because the Blue Jays got swept by the Phillies. Now, again, the Phillies don't have any impact on the Rays at all, again, unless they meet in the World Series and we're talking about home field advantage. But the Boston and New York series, okay, you can make the argument that Boston winning that series is also sort of bad for the Rays, in the fact that they swept the series and didn't just win 2 of 3, because now they're knocking on the doorstep. They've won 5 straight. But you never know, like, how these runs go, right? The Red Sox, sure, they've won 5 straight. Before that, they were in the basement. The Orioles, they've won 3 straight. Before that, they were in the basement. How much longer does that go? I mean, you've got 3 teams in the AL East right now with win streaks of 3 or more, and then the other 2 teams are on losing streaks of 3. Um, yeah, and then the AL Central, everybody's on a losing streak right now. Literally, everybody's on a 2-game losing streak or more. Most of them are 4 and 5, 6 games. Oh my goodness. Um, but everybody has those sorts of runs. What winds up happening is the more series that you win down the stretch, those are the ones that really determine how good of a team you are. Because you can drop 2 of 3 to the Red Sox, who are division rival, but they're below you, and they're below you by still a significant amount. I mean, 3 games, that's still pretty. I mean, they're barely above 500 right now. For this point in the season, that's pretty significant. Now, they could go on to lose their next 4 series, and then they're taken out of the equation, but where do the Rays stack up against that with the opponents that they have in the next couple of weeks? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that, all right, momentum is a great thing, but if you don't have it, then you got to find a way to get it back and at least win a series. Or if you've lost 2 games in a series, you've at least got to win the third one. The key to making the playoffs is don't get swept. Try to win or split every series, and that's basically it. And if you do that, you're going to win 100 games. Now, the Rays have been very good in the last couple months, last month. Um, it's just a matter of how much they can really sustain that. And, the starting pitching has been there. The hitting has been there the last 3 games. I mean, what's amazing to me is you look up and down the lineup, and it's not just one guy. It can't be just one guy for the Rays. Like, they, I think, stack up well against the best teams in baseball, because the best teams in baseball have the biggest payrolls, and most of those payrolls are going to a few players. So if you shut down those players, then you can take a little bit of a deep breath when you get to the 5, 6, 7 spots in the lineup, and then 8 and 9 you'd never really have to worry about. And that's kind of how the series against the Mets went. After you got through the 6th hitter in the lineup, it was almost like, all right, well, the next 3 aren't going to do any damage. And then today it was like they got past Pete Alonso, and, Jeff McNeil, okay, he might get on base. He's probably not going to hit the long ball against you. So you're safe from that. But you get through Soto and you get through Alonso, and you can take a little bit of a deep breath. Because there's not a lot of quality that can really. When the Rays were up 4-0, it was like, all right, if this game is going to be turned around, it's going to be turned around on the bat of one of the superstars. But you get past them, and it's like, all right, where do you go from there? I mean, talking about the Mets lineup, the guys below Alonso in today's lineup: 264, Jeff McNeil, batting average, 229, 219, 241, 248. It's just not anything that would give you anxiety, as you're kind of working your way through the lineup, and especially the Rays, who have such good pitching. Why would you be concerned with those hitters late in the lineup? Now, I'll give credit to Acuna. He went 2 for 3 today. Didn't score any runs. None of those runs scored because the top of the order didn't do anything, but he gets on base. Okay, he's not going to hit the long ball against you. His OPS is 592, so he's not slugging particularly well. So what do you have to be concerned with a guy getting on first for if nobody's going to drive him in? That's the way it's kind of going with the Rays. The Rays stack up well because anybody in the lineup can hit the long ball. We've seen that the last couple of weeks. I mean, almost every hitter in this lineup is capable of hitting a home run or damaging you in some way. I mean, when Jake Mangum comes up and there's a runner on second, you get the feeling that there's something special about to happen, especially if it's in a key situation. Like the game against New York, the first game of the series where they were down 5-1 and then they came back and they tied it. Jake Mangum came up in a key situation and got a hit. And I kind of expected him to do that because that's the type of player that he's been this entire time that he's been with the Rays. And when he's been in the AAA and AA systems too, because let's face it, he's been a great contact hitter for every team for the Rays that he's been on. Um, and I'm shocked that he was still sitting in AA or AAA at the end of last season. Um, but, Aranda can hit the long ball. Caminero, as we saw today. Brandon Lau is historically a home run hitter. Jose Caballero has hit some home runs this year. Cameron Meisner's hit some big ones. The walk-off game one. Danny Jansen hit a home run the other day that gave the Rays the lead. Those were the go-ahead runs, and they won the game. And let's talk about Danny Jansen for a second. So, I said this in the last episode, but the Rays, with coming into this season or going into the last offseason, that was almost a no-brainer move for me. Danny Jansen, to me, was almost like if they didn't wind up with him, I would have been confused as to why not. He wasn't looking for a big payday, and the Rays could use any moving, breathing catcher that can hit above 150. And Jansen, at the start of the season, struggled a little bit, but he still got hits. He was still, getting on base. Now he's batting 200 right now. That is infinitely better. And if you talk about the Rays being in the postseason, you can't talk about it without talking about Danny Jansen. Because upgrading that position has been tremendous for the Rays. That was an automatic out a good portion of last year, except for that little stretch where Ben Rortvedt was doing all right. But Danny Jansen has been exactly what everybody expected him to be. He hasn't exceeded expectations. Let's be realistic about that. But he's met them. He's a catcher who bats 200 as of right now and has some big hits in the process, especially in this past series. He hits the long ball. His OPS is 673. So he's what the Rays needed. He's an upgrade at a position that they really desperately needed an upgrade for. They've actually upgraded that position twice because Matt Tice has been a fantastic addition as well. So I don't think you sweat the catcher position nearly as much as you did last year. Every other position has either been the same or gotten an upgrade. Caminero has been on a tear recently and he's gotten better. First base, coming into the season, it was like, okay, Yandy Diaz is going to be the de facto 162 game first baseman. Jonathan Aranda came into the first game of this season, and from the very start, if this guy is not the first base starter for the American League All-Star team, like, there's no argument. Right now, he is the starter. That is his spot to lose on that All-Star team. He's batting 319 with a 902 OPS. He does everything. He hits for average. He hits for power. He hits in key clutch situations. He's doing everything that the Rays need him to do. And remember, last year, Rays fans were, like, psychotic about this guy because he was hitting 200, maybe a little below that. It's like, he's young. Give him time. Let him develop, okay? And he's developed, obviously, very nicely. So they've upgraded first base infinitely, which is shocking because Yandy Diaz was great. Maybe not great, but he was good last season. He batted 250, 260, which was, good. The Rays didn't make the playoffs, so, you need a little bit of an upgrade somewhere, and they wound up getting it at first base. The outfield has really been the upgrade. And when you think about how much time Josh Lowe missed and the fact that he's not even really part of the magic that the outfield has really put together recently. It's, Johnny DeLuca being out after the September he had last year. It's almost like, all right, well, what do you go to from here? Well, you go to Jake Mangum, who's batting 301. You go to Cameron Meisner, who's batting 214, but he has an OPS of 630. That's good. You like that. And then Josh Lowe, he's struggling right now. I think he'll get. I think he'll get it together. I think he'll be fine. Um, I mean, you got Jose Caballero. He can play almost anywhere. He's been better this season, I think, than he has last season, especially with runners in scoring position. Um, like they've just upgraded everywhere. Shortstop and catcher were the two questionable positions at the start of the year, and catcher has been good. Shortstop has been good. I mean, they're not going to be all stars, but they're doing what you need them to do, and they're coming up clutch in key situations. And you just let the big guys, if those guys get on base, you just let the big guys, Junior Caminero, Jonathan Aranda, Brandon Lau, Jake Mangum somehow, you let them do the work for you. And they're doing it. But everybody's doing it. Everybody in this lineup right now is doing it for the Rays, and that's fantastic. That's exactly what they need. Because you're going to have hitters that go on slumps. Jake Mangums is coming. I mean, he's great right now. He's going to go on a little bit of a slump at some point this season. And he's going to make a correction. And he's going to be good. But in the time that he's in a slump, who's going to pick it up? Well, you've got Junior Caminero. You've got Jonathan Aranda. You've got Brandon Lau. Those are just the guys that are hot now. If you get Josh Lowe going, if you get Christopher Morel to find the long ball again, if you get, Danny Jansen to keep playing how he's playing, if you get Taylor Walls to keep playing how he's playing. I mean, Taylor Walls is another guy. The last 7 games, 316 average, slugging 632, and all that with just 1 home run. So he's getting a lot of extra base hits. He's only struck out 6 times in 19 at-bats. Last 15 games, he's hitting over 300. Or he's hitting exactly 300. Slugging 475. So you've got these guys, as long as they don't, if they even all slump together, as long as it's not prolonged, you feel good about the team. And as long as the pitching keeps going, I mean, the bullpen is going to give up runs at some point. They're going to have games like the Red Sox game or the Marlins game, the first game of the Red Sox series or the second game of the Marlins series, where the bullpen, don't get into specifics with the actual pitchers, but, a guy in the bullpen gives up 3 or 4 runs in an outing. You're going to have that. It's baseball. You play every day. It's just, the fact that the Rays have so many guys that they can turn to, there's reason to be optimistic about all of that. Josh Lowe is a guy that I think needs to get it going quickly. Taj Bradley is another guy because it looks like Shane McClanahan's going to be out of the lineup for a little bit. Taj Bradley's now had 2 starts in a row that haven't been good at all. And at a certain point, you start wondering, like, when do you get into opener territory again, right? Like, maybe he's a guy that the next time they send him out there, maybe Englert pitches the first couple of innings, and then they put Bradley in there. Because just the past couple of starts have not been it. He gave up 7 runs against, who was that? Was that Miami? Yeah. He gave up 7 runs against Miami. He gave up 5 runs against the Mets. And they should have all been earned because it was his error that really caused all of that mess. But that's just not how the rules of baseball work. He's just got to, they've got to find a way to get him to be better than he's been the last couple of starts. He doesn't have to be like how he was last July, but the rest of the rotation, they go out, they do their job, they give up 3 runs or less. They turn it over to the bullpen. The bullpen generally gives up a run or less. So, like I've said repeatedly since the start of the season, you score 5 runs in a game, you're going to win almost every game. Let's see where the Rays are now. When the Rays score 4 or more runs, their record is 31-7. Yeah, that's crazy. I don't know where the 7 losses came from. Oh well. They're 38-12 when they score 3 runs, the Rays. Um, when holding their opponents to less than 4 runs, the Rays are 27-10 when allowing less than 4 runs. And when they allow less than 5 runs, they are 33-18. I don't know where that came from. Because before that, I mean, I don't think that's the answer to the question I was actually looking for. Before that, they were 21-1 or something crazy like that. Um, when holding opponents to under 5 runs per game. Let's see. Now it's not giving me anything. Damn, I had the stat and I lost it. But the Rays have just been fantastic in those scenarios. Like late in games, the bullpen is shutting the door. It's like they give up less than 4 runs in a game, and you expect them to win almost every game. And the last 2 weeks have kind of been a testament to that. Every game that they've given up, like it's sort of just been the same thing, right? They give up 1 run to Texas. They give up 4 runs to Texas. They give up 3 runs. They win all 3 games. Against Miami, they give up 3 runs in the first one. They give up 11 in the second one, and they lose. They give up 2 in the third game. They win both of the games that they give up less than 5 runs. The game against Boston, they give up 8. They still find the way to win. And then they give up 3 and 4. They still lose those games, but that's because they don't score enough runs. Against the Mets, they give up 5 runs, 4 runs, and then 0 runs, and they win all 3 of them. That is the Tampa Bay Rays. If they score 5 runs, they win a vast majority of those games. A vast majority of them. That's all you need. You just need 5. And most of the time, not even. Most of the time, you just need 4. And the Rays have been able to do that almost all season. And even on the road, they've been able to do that. I mean, it's easy. It's easier to do at Steinbrenner because the long ball is such a factor there. But doing it on the road against the Mets, where they didn't even really rely on the long ball for too much. I mean, it got the stuff. It got everything started in the first game of that series, and then they wound up ending the series with a 3-run homer. But most of the runs have come through, you know, getting on base and then somebody else driving them home. That's just how the Rays have been doing it. That's how historically they've been doing it. And that is basically where the winning comes from with the Rays. How they've been winning so many games as of late. Let's talk a little bit about the implications for all this. I know we're deep into this podcast now, but the Devil Rays advocate for today. The first episode, I talked about Chandler Simpson, and the Devil Rays advocate is basically me taking the opposition side, the unpopular opinion. So the Rays right now, like I said, they're 3 games into a wild card spot. They're 3.5 back of the division lead. If the postseason were to start today, which it doesn't, but if it were to start today, they're actually 2.5 up on the wild card spot. On the final wild card spot, they're 3 games into a wild card position over Minnesota and Boston. If the playoffs were to start today, they would host a home playoff game. So what happens if that winds up being the case? If they wind up getting that spot, or maybe they drop to 5 or 6 and they win the wild card round against whoever. I think the 6th seed is the easiest to be in if you enter the playoffs anymore, because you wind up playing the worst division winner as opposed to being 4 or 5 and playing a team that's basically at the same level as you. You could have 200 win teams at 4-5 while having a 90 win team at 3. It doesn't look like that because right now that's Houston, who the Rays have kind of split with this season. I mean, they've won 4 of 7, but it's been tight. And you don't want to go against their bullpen. Their bullpen is pretty good too. Um, where do you play those games? Devil Rays advocate today is I think that those games should be played at George Steinbrenner Field. I think there is no other solution, and I think the MLB is probably starting to think about it, especially after this weekend, that there's a realistic possibility that the Rays could wind up hosting a couple of playoff games at some point in the wild card, in the division series. The way that they've been playing, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility. I think those games need to be played at Steinbrenner Field. I don't think the MLB would even really have a problem with those games being played at Steinbrenner Field because they don't really care about attendance anymore. They care about how something looks on TV. Now, what I do know about Steinbrenner Field is that right field is shallow, left field is shallow, the whole ballpark is shallow, let's be honest. Um, does that not create the sort of easy home run hitting atmosphere that the MLB wants to see? Like, just imagine for a second an ALDS between the Yankees and the Rays at Steinbrenner Field. Is that not exactly what the MLB wants? A series where it's almost guaranteed going to be settled by the long ball? Like, that is basically to a T what the MLB wants to kind of create. They want the home run to be the biggest factor in every game. And they've got a stadium where it's easy to hit home runs, where there are home runs that are hit that the ball gets up into the jet stream and it just carries. I mean, how fantastic is that? The MLB has it right there for them. If the Rays make the postseason and they get to host a couple of playoff games, oh my God. That series, or those series, if it winds up being multiple series, which we all hope it will be, that would be fantastic. That would be cinema, peak cinema. You're gonna have games that wind up being like 13-10. If you host postseason games in that stadium, that's going to be a final score for one of your games. It's going to be two teams in double digits. Now, I hope that that's not the case because I hope the Rays can lock it down if they make the postseason and don't give up runs at all. But I think you're going to have a game like that at some point at Steinbrenner Field. Now, if they get all the way to the World Series, I think you still play those games at Steinbrenner Field. I'm not kidding. Because if you get that sort of scenario happening where teams are just hitting the long ball and that's just making up a vast majority of the series, the MLB doesn't really care too much about attendance anyway. I mean, think about it. Like, how many games do you watch on TV and it's not even sold out? Like, you can just upcharge the hell out of everything. Unfortunately, that's probably what would happen if the Rays hosted home playoff games. But if you're getting entertainment, all that matters is your TV ratings anymore. That's all these leagues really care about. And I think a World Series played at Steinbrenner Field would definitely get those ratings if, teams are hitting home runs left and right, which they will be. I mean, think about that Dodgers-Astros World Series from, what was that, like 8 years ago. I mean, game 5 of that series, I know the Astros were, cheating during that game, basically. Let's not skirt around the issue. But 13-12, that was the final score of that game. Anything to left field, which is very shallow at Minute Maid Park, everything that went to left field seemed to have gotten out in that game, or even in that series. Forget about just the game, the whole series. So I think at the end of the day, you've got to play those games at Steinbrenner Field. You've got to. You've got to play those games at Steinbrenner Field. Where else are you going to play them? You're going to play them at Marlins Park, which is 3.5 hours away from Tampa, in a market where nobody really even cares about baseball there. I like you're going to play it in a stadium in a series that that there, like, what would be the point of playing that series in Miami? Just because it's a major league ballpark, you're not going to get attendance anyway. Who from Miami wants to see a Tampa Bay Rays playoff series unless it is against the Yankees? Nobody would like if it's Rays versus, I don't know, Houston. Let's just say it's Rays versus Astros. Who's going to go to that if it's in Miami? Nobody's going to go to that. Nobody's going to drive 3.5 hours, especially because a lot of these games in the postseason wind up being played on a weekday at like 1 o'clock. I mean, I remember the first playoff series that the Rays were in. I'm pretty sure Game One was besides the wild card, but Game One of the ALDS against Houston. I'm pretty sure that was at like a 2 or 3 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon or something like that. I don't even remember. But it wasn't like a primetime 8 o'clock game. It was like midday. So who from Miami is going to think to themselves at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday, Thursday afternoon, you know what? Let me go watch the Rays and Astros in the playoffs. Your attendance for that is going to be probably about what the Marlins pack in a game anyway, which is not very good. And that's not what you want for the postseason. You want, like, I feel like, I mean, the other solution is the Braves. And the Braves might even be in the postseason. But even if they're not, okay, well, Atlanta is, I don't even know how far from Tampa Atlanta would be. Probably 4 or 5 hours. Who from Tampa, who from Houston, who from New York is going to make that trip to Atlanta to watch that? All the Yankees fans live in Florida or New York. They don't live in Georgia. Who's going to watch that? You're going to have a half-empty stadium? That just doesn't look good. Or you could have a full stadium full of 10,000 screaming fans, especially if it is between the Rays and Yankees. Um, and you can just upcharge the hell out of people. Just host them there. And you get a better product on the screen, on the field. Everything, I don't know. I don't see how you have a playoff series elsewhere. Unless it just winds up being at the opponent's stadium. But that doesn't make any sense because you can't have a best of 7 series where all 7 games are slated for one stadium. Then what's the point in the Rays even being in the postseason if they don't get to host a playoff game? I don't see how you don't play games at Steinbrenner Field if the Rays make the postseason. That's just how it is. So that's my argument for that. MLB, make it happen. If we get in the postseason, I want to see games at Steinbrenner Field. And they're going to be amazing. And the product on the screen is going to be exactly what you've wanted for so many years. Just bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb. Home runs, home runs, home runs, home runs. Till it's, 15-14 in the 7th inning of the ALDS in Game 5. I can like hear Rob Manfred salivating at that. So make it happen. The highlight hitter. So last week or 2 weeks ago, I did a segment called Hitter of the Week. Doesn't make a lot of sense because this podcast happens every other week. But I'm going to call this segment Highlight Hitter. That makes a little more sense because it's a couple of weeks. The highlight hitter of the last couple of weeks is Jake Mangum. Without a question, best hitter on the Rays team right now. 346 average in the past 7 games, 5 RBIs, and 433 on base percentage. He's been great with runners in scoring position all season, batting around 500 in those situations. Had some key hits to get on base, and then was a tying run in that 5-1 comeback over the New York Mets that wound up being 7-5. The Rays this season, this cannot be hampered home enough. Anybody who had the misfortune of having to sit there and watch the Tampa Bay Rays last season, it was more frustrating than if they had just gone like 60 and 100 or something like that at times. Because with runners in scoring position, they were god awful. They were worse than the Chicago White Sox, who sucked, who were the worst team in MLB history last season. They were just as bad as, if not worse than them, with runners in scoring position. The Rays are third in average with runners in scoring position, batting 276, which is phenomenal. They're third in OPS. And here's the real kicker. For a team that didn't hit a lot of home runs last year, who historically hasn't hit a lot of home runs, they're fourth in home runs with runners in scoring position. How? 1 year. 1 year. The difference was 1 year. And like 3 or 4 players that all of a sudden can hit with runners in scoring position. Aranda, Caminero, Mangum, Brandon Lau at times. That's basically it. I mean, Jose Caballero, a little bit, but he hasn't really. He's still batting like 230 something, so not necessarily. But third with runners in scoring position in average and OPS. How? That's just fantastic. And Mangum has kind of led the way in that category. He's batting 500. Every time he comes to the plate with runners in scoring position in a key scenario, you almost expect that he's going to get a hit. You almost expect that those runs are going to score. And when he is in scoring position, then you know anything in the outfield, he's going to score. Anything on the ground in the outfield, he's scoring. Could be a 200 hits or a 200-foot single to center field. He's scoring. His speed, his average, he doesn't have a lot of power. Okay, you don't really need him to have a lot of power because you've got Aranda and Caminero. His role is to hit. His role with Durham was to hit. Hit the ball, put it in play, get on base, get a batting average above 300. His batting average is 301. He has been everything that people like me who were watching him in Durham and looking at the stats after every game wanted the Rays so desperately to have last season because they didn't have a guy like that. They only had guys that were batting 250, 240 that could hit the long ball, but not very often, not often enough to be like a contending team. Probably the worst offense that I've seen from the Rays since I've been a fan. And then this year, they are one of the best offenses in the league in general, and then in with runners in scoring position and in key situations where it matters. And that's why they're 7 games above 500 now, and that's why they're winning almost every single series. And Jake Mangum is leading the way in that. Now, primetime pitcher. This was a little tougher. Last week, this was called Pitcher of the Week. Now I'm just calling it primetime pitcher. This one's tough because the Rays have had some great starting pitching performances, but a lot of the guys that had those performances also haven't had great ones. I think primetime pitcher has to be Eric Orze. He allowed 2 runs against Boston. That's been it in his last 7 games. He has a 127 whip, 12 Ks in the last 7 games. He's pitched almost every day. Every other day since June 5th he has pitched in. He's just been fantastic out of the bullpen for the Rays. He's been a big part of why the Rays bullpen has been so good. He just hasn't given up runs. Nobody really in the Rays bullpen has given up runs, but he's been the guy that's been in there like every single day, not giving up runs, coming in key situations when the Rays need him with runners on, and just getting out of jams and not really giving anything up. That's what the Rays need. They need pitchers like that, and they've always had relievers like that. And Eric Orze, surprisingly, has been the guy for them this season. I think he's really the guy that if the Rays do make the postseason, that's the guy I think you want on the mound in the 7th and 8th innings. I mean, think about it this way, right? If you have a rotation of, let's just say, Drew Rasmussen, game one. Well, if the Rays are a wild card team, that wouldn't be the case. But let's just say that the Rays are in a wild card spot. You've got, Drew Rasmussen game one. You've got probably Ryan Pepio game two, and then if necessary, game three, Zach Littell. If they get to the sixth inning, which is what you would kind of expect from them, and then you turn it over to the bullpen, you've got Orze for the seventh or eighth. And then you could go basically any other direction after that. Manuel Rodriguez, let's just say, for the other inning, and then Pete Fairbanks in the ninth. It can't get much better than that for the Rays. I mean, what do they do at the deadline even? Do they get another reliever? Do they get a hitter? And in what position? Like who do you send down? Who do you get rid of on this team? Mason Montgomery, maybe? Cameron Meisner, if, the average doesn't pick up, I guess. Christopher Morel, I think, is the first name that I would assume comes off the roster if the Rays need that to happen. I really don't know. But Eric Orze has just been phenomenal for the Rays over the past couple of weeks. He is the type of guy that you really hope he winds up being as good in the postseason as he is in the regular season, because if he is, the Rays have a very good chance of making a deep postseason run. So let's talk about the road ahead, right? We've got a couple weeks till the next episode. Last episode, I said I wanted the Rays to go 8-4 or 7-5, and they went 9-3. Well, let's talk about the games first, right? They've got 4 games versus Baltimore. Baltimore is winning as of late, but they're winning the games that they should, and they're still struggling against some of the top teams in the MLB. They lost 2-3 against Detroit. They haven't really played many teams. I mean, they lost a series against Boston, I think, not too long ago. They're beating the teams that they should beat. They're coming off of a sweep of the Angels, okay, but it's the Angels, so how much stock do you really put into that? They're doing better. I think they're 14-11 or something like that since they fired their manager. So they're getting better. They're still 10 games under 500. I think this 4-game series is winnable for the Rays easily. I mean, you also got to think about the New York Mets were in a similar position, only they'd won 6 straight games against some of the league's bottom dwellers. And then the Rays came in and swept them. So there you go. There's that. After that Baltimore series, they've got 3 games against Detroit. Detroit's on a little bit of a losing skid. They're in a little bit of a slump right now, but who from the AL Central isn't? They're 5-5 in their last 10. They've lost 2 straight. What helps even more is that Tampa Bay is going to face Mize, but won't face Skubal, who is scheduled to pitch, I think, the second game of the series before that. So the Rays aren't going to have to go against the Cy Young favorite right now, which is fantastic. Maybe an easier situation for the Rays to work through. And then they play 3 games at Kansas City. Kansas City is in the worst part of their season. They've lost a lot in the last month. They've lost 6 straight as of today. They've lost 8 out of their last 10. That is basically where this is the time of year that you want to be facing Kansas City, and hopefully they don't pick it up between now and then, because that is in a week. And then after that, they have 3 games against Baltimore. So they play 13 games in the next stretch. I think the 4 games against Baltimore you should split at the very least. You should at least split those games. Against Detroit, like I said, you're not facing Skubal. You're not facing the Cy Young Award winner. That should be a series you win 2 of 3. And you should win 2 of 3 against Kansas City. And you should win 2 of 3 at Baltimore. So, in essence, I think during this stretch, the Rays should go 8-5 at least. 2 games against Baltimore, 2 against Detroit, 2 against KC, 2 against Baltimore. Make it happen. If you lose a series, okay, but I could easily see them coming back and sweeping Kansas City or Baltimore or even Detroit. Who couldn't they sweep right now? They just swept the Mets, the hottest team in the MLB, the best team in the MLB. They just swept them. They could sweep any of these teams. You could sweep the Yankees. They could sweep the Phillies. They could sweep anybody at this point. Why not Detroit? Why not KC? Why not Baltimore, who's 20 and 30? They've been better recently, okay, sure, but a 4-game sweep against Baltimore, that's not out of the equation. I don't think they're going to wind up with a 7-game win streak before they face Detroit. But it's not out of the question. And if I'm a Rays fan right now, I'm looking at every team, not just in the American League, I'm looking at every team in the MLB and thinking how the Rays have been playing the last month. It's not just been one stretch, right? It hasn't just been, all right, they swept the Mets this weekend. That's great. If the Rays make the postseason and they go on a deep playoff run and they make it to the World Series, today, June 15th, 2025, is the day that I come back to as the first time that I thought it could be a realistic possibility that maybe they get that far. Because before today, before this weekend, it was almost like, all right, they're winning these series. That's great and everything. They lost the series against Boston. They had a rough outing against Miami. But then they sweep the Mets, and they swept the Rangers before that, and they won 2 of 3 against Houston before that, and they won 2 of 3 against Minnesota before that, and then Toronto they swept, and they won 2 of 3 against Houston. That's all within basically the last month. It has been a fantastic month for the Rays. Can they keep it up? And I think in 2 weeks' time, it'll be it'll be marginally easier to answer the question of whether this is just a run that the Rays have gone on, or is this what we can expect from this team in July and August? Because by the time I make the next episode, it's going to be almost July. And if the Rays are still in a playoff spot at that point, if they're still in a playoff spot at the All-Star break, I think absolutely, unquestionably, you're buyers at the deadline. But I think the bigger question at that point is, are you good enough to even win the division? Like, where they're at now, it's kind of coming into question a little bit. A little bit. The Yankees are on a little bit of a downturn. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think the Rays are a wild card team. But if we're talking in 2 weeks and the Rays are sitting just there, and then 2 weeks after that, at the All-Star break, they're still right there, I think that's an absolutely valid question to ask if the Rays could win the division. At that point. Not yet. Not yet. And I do think that it is in the realm of possibility that they could go on a deep postseason run with the roster that they have. I don't know how the talent stacks up in the National League, especially with the Dodgers pitching situation being so unpredictable. They just swept the Mets, who are the best team in baseball, and the Phillies, who are hot and cold more than any other team in the MLB. And holy smokes, talking about the Boston Red Sox, the Red Sox, as I'm filming this, the San Francisco Giants have acquired Rafael Devers from the Boston Red Sox. Wow. Who did they get for that? I missed the notification. Who did they get for that deal? Oh my goodness. The San Francisco Boston is getting Jordan Hicks and much more. Much more. Oh my goodness. So, obviously, whatever was happening in the locker room has kind of boiled over, because that is, wow. Rafael Devers is going to the Giants. Jordan Hicks and much more in return. How's Jordan Hicks' season going? Jordan Hicks is okay, 6.47 ERA, but much more. What does much more mean? Oh goodness. Wow. So that changes the playoff picture as well. How? We have no idea yet. But I think that is a good thing to end on. What a wow. You see, I script these episodes, but that you can't script like that. My phone buzzed just as I was about to wrap this up, and I just see Rafael Devers is going to the Giants. So that is a guy that the Rays do not want in this division. If they're competing for a playoff spot, then now is not in this division. I guess we just have to see what much more is. Hopefully, just draft picks. Hopefully, this just means Boston is tanking the rest of the season, and that paves an even clearer runway for the Rays to get into the playoffs. But a franchise player in the last 20, 30 minutes has been shipped out of the AL East. So, anyways, wow, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching, and peace out, broskies.